What would you do if you had just one $20 bill left to your name? Your last chance to eat for the next 4 days. Your final safety net before complete desperation. Now imagine walking past someone who's even less than you do. Maya Rodriguez faced exactly this choice on a cold October night. A 19-year-old college student working double shifts just to survive, she was already living on ramen noodles and wearing shoes held together by hope. But when she encountered a stranger asking for help outside a grocery store, Maya made a decision that would change everything. Not just for her, but for everyone who had ever dismissed her kindness as weakness. You see, that stranger wasn't who he appeared to be. And the people who mocked Maya for her generosity, they were about to learn a lesson in karma that would flip their entire world upside down. Her cruel landlord who called her stupid for helping others? He owned the wrong building. Her manager who blamed Maya's kindness for business problems? She was stealing from the wrong company. Everyone who thought Maya's compassion made her weak was about to discover they had been dead wrong. Because sometimes the person you least expect holds the power to change your life forever. Sometimes kindness isn't just rewarded, it's rewarded in ways that seem impossible. And sometimes the universe has a sense of justice so perfect, it feels like fiction. But this really happened. And by the end of this story, you'll never look at acts of kindness the same way again. Maya Rodriguez stared at the crumpled $20 bill in her palm, her fingers trembling from exhaustion. At 19, she already looked older than her years. Dark circles shadowed her brown eyes, and her once bright smile had faded into something more weathered, more desperate. The fluorescent lights of Danny's diner buzzed overhead as Maya untied her grease-stained apron for the third time that day. She had just finished her double shift, working from 6 in the morning until 11 at night. Her feet screamed inside her worn sneakers, the soles so thin she could feel every crack in the pavement. Another glamorous day in paradise, she whispered to herself, stuffing the 20 into her jacket pocket. This was it. Her last $20 until her next paycheck in 4 days. $20 to buy groceries, pay for bus fare, and somehow stretch until Thursday. Maya grabbed her backpack and headed for the door. The bell chimed as she stepped into the cold October night. The streets were nearly empty except for a few late-night stragglers and the occasional taxi rushing past. She pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders and started the 15-minute walk to her studio apartment. The grocery store on 5th Street stayed open until midnight. Maya had timed this perfectly. She would grab some pasta, a jar of sauce, maybe some bread if she was lucky. Ramen noodles again if she was being realistic. She had eaten nothing but instant ramen for the past 3 days, and her stomach had stopped growling in protest hours ago. As she approached the store, Maya noticed him right away. An older man sat on the concrete steps leading to the entrance, his back against a brick wall. His clothes were layered and dirty, a faded baseball cap pulled low over his weathered face. A cardboard sign rested against his knees, though Maya couldn't make out the words in the dim light. Most people hurried past without a glance. Maya had seen this before, the way pedestrians suddenly became very interested in their phones or found fascinating things to look at across the street. Anything to avoid making eye contact with someone asking for help. Maya slowed her pace. She recognized something in the man's posture, a quiet dignity despite his circumstances. He wasn't aggressive or demanding like some she had encountered. He simply sat there, existing in a world that seemed determined to pretend he was invisible. "Excuse me, miss," the man called softly as Maya reached the store entrance. His voice was gravelly but gentle. "I'm sorry to bother you. I know it's late." Maya stopped and turned toward him. Up close, she could see his face more clearly. He appeared to be in his 60s, with kind blue eyes that seemed out of place with his rough appearance. His beard was gray and unkempt, but his hands were surprisingly clean as he held up his cardboard sign. "Anything helps. God bless." That was all the sign said. Simple. Honest. Maya felt her heart squeeze in her chest. She knew that desperation, that feeling of being invisible while the world rushed past. She lived it every single day. "What's your name?" she asked, kneeling down to his level. The man looked surprised. Most people didn't ask homeless individuals for their names. They were just problems to be solved or ignored, not human beings with identities and stories. "Vincent," he said quietly. "But most folks call me Vinny." "I'm Maya." She extended her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Vinny shook it. His grip was firm, calloused from years of hard work she could only imagine. "It's nice to meet you, Maya. You don't have to stop. I know people got places to be." Maya glanced at the grocery store behind her, then back at Vinny. She thought about her empty refrigerator, about the pasta and sauce she desperately needed, about the rent that was due in 6 days, and the part-time job that barely covered her expenses even when she worked herself to exhaustion. "When's the last time you ate?" she asked. Vinny's eyes widened slightly. "Oh, don't worry about me, sweetheart. I'm not asking for food. Just whatever you can spare, if you can spare it." "That's not what I asked." Maya's voice was gentle, but insistent. "When did you last eat?" Vinny looked down at his hands. "Yesterday morning. Lady at the coffee shop gave me half a sandwich." Maya felt something twist in her stomach, and it wasn't hunger. She pulled the $20 bill from her pocket and stared at it. Her last $20. Her grocery money. Her safety net until Thursday. Maya, no. Vinny must have seen the look in her eyes because he immediately started shaking his head. "I can see you're working hard. You don't need to be giving me anything. How can you see that? Your shoes, honey. They're worn down to nothing. Your clothes are clean but old. You got that look about you, the look of someone who's fighting just to stay afloat." "I know because I've been there." Maya glanced down at her sneakers. He was right. The canvas was separating from the rubber sole on the left one, and she had been dreading the day they would finally fall apart completely. "We're both struggling," she said simply. "But I have a job. I have a place to sleep tonight." "You don't. That don't mean you got to fix my problems." Maya stood up and pressed the $20 bill into Vinny's palm before he could protest further. "It's not about fixing your problems. It's about doing what's right." Vinny stared at the money in his hand like it was foreign currency. "Maya, this is too much. This is probably all you got. It's what I can give." Maya stepped back before he could hand it back to her. "There's a McDonald's 3 blocks down that stays open all night. Get yourself something warm. I can't take this from you." "You're not taking it. I'm giving it." Maya managed a tired smile. "My grandmother used to say that kindness is the only thing that multiplies when you divide it." Tears gathered in Vinny's eyes, and he quickly wiped them away with the back of his sleeve. "Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman." "She was." Maya's smile faltered slightly. "She would have done the same thing." "What about you? What are you going to eat?" Maya shrugged, trying to appear more casual than she felt. "I've got some stuff at home. Don't worry about me." It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Vinny seemed to understand that accepting her gift with grace was more important than arguing about it. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You don't know what this means. Take care of yourself, Vinny." Maya turned and walked away before her resolve could weaken. She didn't look back, but she could feel his eyes on her as she made her way down the empty street. Her stomach growled loudly, reminding her of the choice she had just made. The walk home felt longer than usual. Maya's apartment building was a run-down brick structure wedged between a laundromat and a check-cashing place. The elevator had been broken for 3 months, so she climbed the 4 flights of stairs to her studio on the top floor. She unlocked her door and stepped into the cramped space that served as her bedroom, living room, and kitchen all in one. The refrigerator hummed loudly in the corner, nearly empty except for a half-empty jar of peanut butter and some condiment packets she had saved from various restaurants. Maya collapsed onto her futon and stared at the water stain on the ceiling. She had given away her last $20 to a stranger. Some people would call that stupid, reckless, irresponsible. But as she closed her eyes and tried to ignore the gnawing hunger in her stomach, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. For the first time in a long time, she had done something purely good, with no expectation of return. She thought about Vinny, hoping he would find that McDonald's and get himself something warm to eat. She thought about her grandmother, who would have been proud of her choice. And she thought about tomorrow, wondering how she would make it through the next 4 days until her paycheck arrived. Maya fell asleep on her futon, still wearing her work clothes, dreaming of a world where kindness was a currency that never ran out. Maya's phone alarm shrieked at 5:30 in the morning, jolting her awake from a restless sleep. Her stomach felt like it was eating itself from the inside out. She had managed to find half a sleeve of stale crackers in her cupboard the night before, but that was hours ago. She stumbled to her tiny bathroom and splashed cold water on her face, avoiding her reflection in the cracked mirror. The girl looking back at her had hollow cheeks and tired eyes that belonged to someone much older. Maya grabbed her backpack and headed for the stairs, each step echoing in the empty stairwell. She had exactly 47 minutes to get to Danny's diner for her opening shift. Public transportation would eat into her non-existent budget, so walking it was. The morning air was crisp and unforgiving. Maya pulled her thin jacket tighter and started the 25-minute trek across town. Her stomach cramped with hunger, but she pushed through it. She had survived worse than this. As she turned onto Maple Street, Maya noticed something was wrong immediately. Danny's diner should have been glowing with warm light, the open sign flickering in the window. Instead, the building sat dark and lifeless. Maya quickened her pace, her heart hammering against her ribs. A small crowd had gathered outside the restaurant, other employees looking just as confused and worried as she felt. "What's going on?" Maya asked Tommy, one of the line cooks who had worked there for 6 years. "Place is closed," Tommy said, his face grim. "Permanently. Owner filed for bankruptcy last night. Didn't even have the decency to call us." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. "Closed? What do you mean closed?" "I mean we're all out of jobs, sweetheart." This came from Rita Novak, the day manager who had never particularly liked Maya. Rita was 38 years old with bleached blonde hair and a permanent scowl that seemed etched into her features. "There has to be some mistake," Maya stammered. "I worked until 11 last night. Everything was normal." Rita let out a harsh laugh. "Normal? Honey, this place has been circling the drain for months. Maybe if you spent less time worrying about feeding every sob story that walked through our doors and more time focusing on actual paying customers, we wouldn't be in this mess." Maya's cheeks burned. Rita was referring to the times Maya had discreetly paid for meals when customers came up short, or when she had given free coffee to people who looked like they needed it more than the restaurant needed their $3. "That has nothing to do with why the restaurant closed," Maya said quietly. "Doesn't it?" Rita stepped closer, her voice dripping with disdain. "You think your little acts of charity don't add up? You think the owner doesn't notice when inventory goes missing or when the register comes up short because you're too soft-hearted to charge full price? I never stole anything. Maybe not technically. But your bleeding heart cost this place money we couldn't afford to lose. And now look where we are." Tommy shifted uncomfortably. "Rita, that's not fair. Maya's one of the hardest workers we had. Hard work doesn't pay the bills when you're giving away the merchandise," Rita snapped. "This is exactly why poor people stay poor. No business sense whatsoever." Maya felt tears sting her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of Rita. Not when she was already down. "I need to get home," Maya mumbled, turning away from the group. "Good idea," Rita called after her. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before playing Mother Teresa with other people's money." The walk home felt endless. Maya's mind raced with calculations she didn't want to make. Without her job, she had exactly $3.47 in her checking account. Her rent was due in 2 days. Her phone bill was overdue. She had no food and no prospects. By the time she reached her building, Maya's hands were shaking. She climbed the 4 flights of stairs on unsteady legs, each step feeling like it might be her last. As she rounded the corner to her floor, Maya stopped dead in her tracks. Derek Patterson was standing outside her apartment door. Derek was her landlord, a 45-year-old man with thinning brown hair and small, calculating eyes. He wore expensive suits that didn't quite hide his growing belly, and he had a way of looking at his tenants like they were inconveniences rather than people paying for shelter. Well, Derek said, checking his gold watch with theatrical precision. "Look who finally decided to show up." "Mr. Patterson," Maya said carefully. "What are you doing here?" "Collecting what's owed to me." "Your rent was due 3 days ago." Maya's heart sank. "It's due on the 15th. Today is the 12th. Derek pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. "Today is the 15th, sweetheart. You're 3 days late." Maya stared at the date, her mind struggling to process the information. The past few days had blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and hunger. Had she really lost track of time so completely? "I need 3 more days," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just lost my job this morning. The restaurant closed. But I can get the money by Monday, I promise." Derek's laugh was cold and sharp. "You lost your job? That's rich. What kind of loser loses their job at a diner? The kind who works for a business that goes bankrupt. Maya shot back, finding a spark of anger in her desperation. Watch your tone with me, little girl. You're not exactly in a position to get attitude. Derek stepped closer, and Maya could smell his expensive cologne mixed with something that might have been whiskey. You know what your problem is? You're too soft. Too stupid. I've seen you, you know. See me what? Giving money to bums on the street. Helping old ladies with their groceries. Playing the Good Samaritan when you can't even pay your own bills. Derek's eyes gleamed with something cruel. I was having dinner at Rossetti's last week, and I saw you through the window. Some homeless guy was asking for change, and you gave him money. Money you should be saving for rent. Maya's blood turned to ice. He was talking about Vinny. About last night. What I do with my money is my business. Not when you owe me money, it isn't. Derek pulled a folded paper from a jacket pocket. This is an eviction notice. You have 24 hours to pay what you owe, plus late fees, or you're out. 24 hours? You can't do that. There are laws. There are also lease agreements, which you signed and apparently didn't read very carefully. Derek's smile was predatory. You want to help every sad story that crosses your path? Here's a sad story for you. Girl gets evicted because she's too stupid to prioritize her own survival. Maya snatched the eviction notice from his hands, her fingers trembling as she read the legal language that might as well have been written in a foreign language. This is $800, she said, looking up at Derek in shock. My rent is $550. Late fees, processing fees, legal fees. Derek shrugged. Should have thought of that before you decided to play charity case with the local homeless population. You're enjoying this, Maya realized, seeing the satisfaction in his eyes. I'm enjoying the lesson. Maybe next time you'll think twice before throwing money at every sob story that comes your way. Maybe you'll realize that being poor means you can't afford to be generous. Derek straightened his tie and checked his watch again. 24 hours, Maya. $800, or you're on the street. And considering your employment situation, I'd say you're about to learn what it feels like to be on the receiving end of all that charity you love giving out. He turned and walked toward the stairs, then paused and looked back at her. Oh, and Maya? When you're sleeping under a bridge somewhere, remember that this is what kindness gets you. This is what happens when you care more about strangers than yourself. Derek's footsteps echoed down the stairwell, leaving Maya alone in the hallway with the eviction notice clutched in her shaking hands. She unlocked her apartment door and stumbled inside, collapsing onto her futon as the full weight of her situation crashed down on her. No job. No money. 24 hours to come up with $800 or lose the only home she had. Maya buried her face in her hands and finally let the tears come. Great, heaving sobs that seemed to tear something loose inside her chest. She cried for her lost job, for her empty stomach, for the impossible choice between helping Vinny and protecting herself. But even through her despair, she couldn't bring herself to regret giving away that $20. Vinny had needed it more than she did, and that was still true even if it had contributed to her current nightmare. As the morning sun streamed through her dirty window, Maya sat on her futon and stared at the eviction notice. In 24 hours, she might be homeless herself. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had tried to help someone who had nothing, and now she was about to lose everything herself. Maya had cried herself to sleep on her futon, still clutching the eviction notice. She woke to the sound of someone knocking on her door. Her eyes felt swollen and raw, and for a moment she couldn't remember why her chest felt so tight with dread. Then it all came flooding back. No job. No money. 24 hours to find $800 or lose her home. The knocking continued, gentle but persistent. Maya dragged herself to the door, expecting to see Derek Patterson with some new threat or demand. She peered through the peephole and froze. It was Vinny. But this wasn't the same man she had met outside the grocery store 24 hours ago. Gone were the layered, dirty clothes and faded baseball cap. Instead, Vinny stood in the hallway, wearing an impeccably tailored charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Maya made in 3 months. His gray hair was neatly trimmed and styled, his beard groomed to perfection. He carried a leather briefcase that looked like it belonged in a corporate boardroom. Maya rubbed her eyes, certain she was hallucinating from hunger and stress. But when she looked again, Vinny was still there, looking like he had stepped out of the pages of Forbes magazine. With trembling hands, Maya unlocked her door and pulled it open. Hello, Maya. Vinny said, his voice the same gentle tone she remembered, but now carrying an undertone of authority that hadn't been there before. Vinny. Maya's voice came out as a croak. What? How? I don't understand. May I come in? We need to talk. Maya stepped aside, still staring at him in shock. Vinny entered her tiny studio apartment, and suddenly the cramped space felt even smaller in the presence of his obvious wealth and power. I know you have questions, Vinny said, setting his briefcase down carefully on her small table. And I promise I'll answer all of them. But first, I need you to know something important. I'm dreaming, Maya said faintly. I fell asleep and I'm having some kind of stress-induced hallucination. Vinny's eyes crinkled at the corners, the same kind of expression she remembered from the night before. You're not dreaming, sweetheart. Though I understand why this might feel surreal. Who are you? Maya whispered. My name is Vincent Alexander Thompson. I'm the CEO and founder of Thompson Industries. Maya's legs suddenly felt weak. Thompson Industries was one of the largest real estate development companies in the state. Their logo was on buildings throughout the city. She had seen Vincent Thompson's name in the business section of newspapers, had heard him mentioned on the local news. That's impossible, she said, sinking onto her futon. You were homeless. You were asking for money. I was testing people's kindness, Vincent said quietly. For the past 3 years, I've been conducting an experiment. I dress as a homeless man and position myself in various locations around properties I own. I watch how people treat me, how they treat someone they perceive as having nothing. Why? Vincent opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Because I wanted to understand the character of the people living and working in buildings I own. I wanted to see who would show compassion to a stranger, even when they had very little themselves. Maya stared at him, her mind struggling to process this information. You own buildings. How many buildings, Maya? Including this one. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. You're my landlord. Derek Patterson works for me. He manages this property and several others. Vincent's expression hardened. And from what I observed yesterday morning, he's been treating my tenants in a way that violates every principle I stand for. Maya's mouth fell open. You saw what happened with Derek? I saw everything. I was parked across the street, watching to see how you would handle the stress of potentially losing your home. I wanted to see if hardship would make you bitter, if it would change the kindness you showed me the night before. Vincent sat down in the single chair across from Maya's futon, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the threadbare furniture. I've been conducting this experiment for 3 years, Maya. 3 years of testing people in my buildings, my restaurants, my businesses. Do you know how many people passed the test? Maya shook her head, still too stunned to speak. 1. You. In 3 years, you are the first person who gave to someone else when you clearly needed help yourself. You are the first person who saw a homeless man as a human being worthy of dignity and respect. I don't understand what this means. Vincent opened the folder and pulled out several documents. It means everything is about to change. Derek Patterson is fired, effective immediately. I've already contacted security to revoke his access to all Thompson properties. You fired Derek? Derek violated the basic principles of human decency. He took pleasure in your pain, mocked your kindness, and threatened you with homelessness while celebrating your suffering. That kind of cruelty has no place in any organization I run. Vincent handed Maya a document. This is Derek's employment termination letter. As of this morning, he no longer works for Thompson Industries. But more importantly for you, his eviction notice is null and void. Maya stared at the termination letter, seeing Derek's name typed in official letterhead. He's really fired. He's really fired. And Maya, there's more. Much more. Vincent pulled out another set of papers. Derek mentioned that you lost your job yesterday at Danny's Diner. What you didn't know is that I owned the entire restaurant chain that Danny's was part of. The bankruptcy was legitimate, but I've been looking for the right person to help me restructure and reopen those locations. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to offer you a position as regional manager for the entire restaurant division. You would oversee the reopening of 15 locations, including the diner where you used to work. Maya felt dizzy. Regional manager. But I'm just a waitress. You're someone who understands what it means to work hard and treat people with dignity. You're someone who would rather go hungry than turn away a person in need. Those are the qualities I need in management. Vincent handed her another document. This is your employment contract. The salary is $65,000 a year, plus benefits, plus performance bonuses. Your first assignment would be to rehire the staff from Danny's Diner, starting with the people who treated customers and coworkers with respect. Maya's hand shook as she looked at the contract. $65,000 was more money than she had ever imagined making. There's still more, Vincent continued. I've been watching you for months, Maya. Long before last night. I've seen you help elderly customers at the diner, pay for meals when people came up short, work double shifts without complaint. I've been looking for someone with your character to help me with a special project. Vincent pulled out one final document, this one thicker than the others. This building where you live is being converted into affordable housing for college students and working families. I want you to oversee that conversion and serve as the property manager. The position comes with a 3-bedroom apartment on the top floor, rent-free, plus the separate salary of $40,000 a year. Maya couldn't breathe. You want me to manage this building? I want you to make sure that no tenant in this building ever experiences what Derek put you through. I want you to create the kind of community where people support each other, where kindness is valued over profit. Vincent reached into his briefcase one more time and pulled out an envelope. And this is a check for $10,000. Consider it a signing bonus or compensation for the suffering Derek caused you, or simply a gift from someone whose faith in humanity you restored. Maya took the envelope with trembling hands and opened it. The check was real. $10,000 made out to her name, signed by Vincent Alexander Thompson. I don't understand why you're doing this, Maya whispered. Vincent's expression grew soft and sad. 5 years ago, I lost my wife and daughter in a car accident. I blamed God. I blamed the world. I blamed everyone and everything. I became bitter and angry and convinced that people were fundamentally selfish and cruel. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. I started this experiment because I wanted to prove that my cynicism was justified. I wanted to find evidence that people only care about themselves, that kindness is just a facade we put on when it's convenient. But you found the opposite. I found that most people are exactly as selfish as I feared. For 3 years, I watched people step over me, ignore me, treat me like I was invisible or dangerous. I watched wealthy people in expensive cars lock their doors when they saw me. I watched middle-class families hurry their children past me as if poverty was contagious. Vincent stood up and walked to Maya's small window, looking out at the street below. But then I found you. A girl who works 3 jobs and eats ramen noodles for dinner, who gave her last $20 to a stranger because she thought he needed it more than she did. You restored my faith in the possibility of human goodness. Maya wiped tears from her eyes. What about Rita? The manager who blamed me for the restaurant closing. Vincent turned back to her with a slight smile. Rita Novak has been fired from the restaurant chain permanently. Her cruel comments about your kindness were the final evidence I needed of her unsuitability for management. She will not be rehired when the restaurants reopen. And Derek? What happens to him now? Derek is currently being evicted from his own apartment. It turns out he was living in one of my buildings, and his lease contained a clause about treating other tenants with respect. He violated that clause repeatedly. Vincent's smile grew wider. He has 24 hours to vacate the premises. Maya laughed through her tears, the sound of pure disbelief and joy. There's one more thing, Vincent said, sitting back down across from her. I've established a foundation to help people like you, people who show extraordinary kindness despite their own struggles. You would serve on the board of directors, helping to identify and assist others who need support. A foundation, the Maya Rodriguez Foundation for Human Kindness. It launches next month with an initial endowment of $5 million. Maya stared at him in complete shock. You're naming a foundation after me? You saved my soul, Maya. You reminded me that goodness still exists in this world. It seems only fitting that your name should be associated with spreading that goodness to others. Vincent stood up and extended his hand to Maya. So what do you say? Are you ready to help me change the world, one act of kindness at a time? Maya looked around her tiny studio apartment, then at the man who had transformed from a homeless stranger into her guardian angel in the span of 24 hours. She thought about Derek, who was about to learn what it felt like to lose his home. She thought about Rita, who would have to find new work after mocking the very kindness that had now elevated Maya beyond anything Rita could have imagined. But mostly, she thought about her grandmother's words. Kindness is the only thing that multiplies when you divide it. Maya stood up and shook Vincent's hand. Yes, she said, her voice strong and clear for the first time in months. Let's change the world. 6 months later, Maya stood in the lobby of the newly renovated Thompson building, watching as Derek Patterson filled out a job application. He looked tired and defeated, his expensive suits replaced with clothing from discount stores. Maya? Derek looked up, recognition dawning in his eyes. I heard you were the manager here now. I am, Maya said simply. Ah, I want to apologize for how I treated you. I was wrong. Maya studied his face, seeing genuine remorse where there had once been cruelty. The foundation is hiring maintenance staff, she said finally. It's honest work, and we treat our employees with dignity and respect. Are you interested? Derek's eyes filled with tears. You would give me a job? After everything I did to you? Maya smiled, thinking of Vincent and the lesson he had taught her about second chances. Everyone deserves the opportunity to be better than they were yesterday, she said. The question is, are you ready to be that person? Derek nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes. Yes, I am. As Maya walked away, leaving Derek to complete his application, she felt her grandmother's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. Kindness really was the only thing that multiplied when you divided it. And the multiplication had only just begun.